President Trump preparing for a major response to Vladimir Putin in Russia. And let's be clear, this will be a 180-degree flip in Trump's Russia policy thus far. Trump teased this week that we'll see some big action with regard to Russia soon, and we're now learning what that is, and it is big. Also, the government of Iran putting out a fatwa on Trump that's now reached a whopping bounty of $40 million US. You heard that right. And California's government is furious that Trump's mass deportation agenda is working. They're so nervous, in fact, the mayor of LA is now authorizing direct cash payments to illegals if you stay in her city, if you stay in LA. You can't make this up. And more stories as well from around the country. So begin preparing, folks, because the US dollar is heading to something we haven't seen in our lifetimes. The warning signs are all there. They're blaring. The US national debt about to hit $37 trillion, the one big beautiful bill, raising the debt ceiling even further. But most important to the sanctity of the dollar, the safety of the dollar, is how people perceive it. Trump's Iran strike helped shore up its strength because the dollar is no longer backed by gold. It's backed by sheer U.S. power, U.S. strength on the world stage. So if that's the case, why has the dollar been nosediving for months? It's a massive crash, mostly led by Scott Bessent, who, let's be honest, knows what he's doing. Scott Bessent is a rock star, but as much as the dollar's descent has been purposely crafted by the Trump administration, they're trying to devalue the dollar. As a cheaper dollar helps to push inflation away, it doesn't come without risk. A full-blown currency crisis is possible if the dollar is devalued enough. The world starts to panic. Big investors, institutional investors, lose confidence, begin moving their money out of dollars into a more stable currency. It's why during the last 6 months, as the dollar's been devalued, gold has been like a rocket ship. People want something safe and stable. And yes, the dollar is the preeminent currency in the world. That's not changing anytime soon, but the world is moving in that direction. We've seen that with BRICS, Russia and China creating their own settlement systems to work outside of the US-controlled SWIFT settlement system. Even our allies signaling they're moving in this direction. This move to ditch the dollar going into overdrive during the Ukraine-Russia war, when the Biden administration began using the power of the dollar to seize Russian assets, force allied countries to seize Russian assets. All of these countries going along because the U.S. threatening sanctions on anyone not agreeing to play along. The Biden administration seized $300 billion in Russia's funds sitting in dollars, just stolen, taken, seized by the U.S. and the EU. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen saying it's not theft. No, it's not theft because we're not using the money, only the interest. Watch.
Well, there is no sense at all in which it's theft. The Russian assets remain in this institution. They've been impounded. The investments that Russia had have matured, so Russia's funds are sitting in cash, but they're generating income for the institution, which Russia has no claim on. So there's no legal issue here.
Since 2022, that money's just been sitting in a bank account generating interest. It was a bridge too far to actually use the money. If you use the money, that's crossing a line we can't come back from. Every country around the world, realize, is in the same position that Russia's in. They keep their assets in dollars. They buy U.S. treasuries. If the U.S. can seize Russia's money, why can't they do the same to anyone else? That's the conundrum. Well, fast forward to present day. Trump's fed up with Putin, completely fed up with him. Early last week, he said this in his cabinet meeting. Watch.
That was a war that should have never happened, and a lot of people are dying, and it should end. And I don't know, we get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Then a few days ago, he was asked about Russia bombing a hospital in Ukraine, and he said he's aware. Trump said he's aware, he knows what's happened, and you'll be seeing some big action on this coming soon. Watch what he said.
Russian drones hit a maternity hospital in Ukraine overnight. I know. You'll be seeing things happen.
Well, now we're learning what that action may be. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, jubilant this morning and giddy over the thought of Trump getting tough on Putin, goes on Face the Nation this morning and telling us what Trump's likely to do this week, what he's been talking to Trump about. Watch.
Senator Graham, I want to ask you on the battlefield and when it comes to weapons, CBS's Jim Laporta has learned a recent defense intelligence assessment shows Ukraine's shortfall in artillery and in drones will lead to marked Russian territorial gains in 2026, with Russia gaining 7-1 firepower superiority by this winter. How can you get them what they need if Congress will not approve in the House any new funding? Is it what Senator Blumenthal just laid out?
Well, just stay tuned for tomorrow's announcement. The idea of America selling weapons to help Ukraine is very much in play. We've given Ukraine a lot. We've given them money. We've given them military aid. We now have a minerals agreement with Ukraine that's worth trillions of dollars. So I don't want to get ahead of the president, but stay tuned about seized assets. The Europeans want to limit the interest on the assets to go to Ukraine. Secretary Bessent wants to go further. Stay tuned about a plan to go after the seized assets more aggressively. Stay tuned for a plan where America will begin to sell to our European allies tremendous amount of weapons that can benefit Ukraine. Putin has calculated that we would get tired and Europe would get weary. He made a huge mistake. NATO is bigger and stronger, and we're more committed than ever to make sure he does not take Ukraine by force. So Congress is on the verge of passing the most consequential sanction package in the history of the country. It will give President Trump tools he doesn't have today, a literal sledgehammer. And the big offender here is China, India, and Brazil. India buys oil from Russia cheap and resells it. That's despicable. I've talked to President Trump. He said last week it's time to move. He's tried to entice Putin to the table, but my goal is to end this war, and the only way you're going to end this war is to get people who prop up Putin, make them choose between the American economy and helping Putin, and you can only have one negotiator, and that's going to be President Trump with maximum flexibility to end this war. China, India, and Brazil, you're about to get hurt big time if you keep helping Putin.
Let me know your thoughts. Should Trump authorize the use of Russia's $300 billion to pay for Ukraine's military aid? Or was there a reason even the Biden administration didn't do that? Maybe because it's illegal and it will add to the destruction of the dollar. What we're seeing here is death by a thousand cuts. Slowly, little by little, the rest of the world getting sick of playing along. With great power comes great responsibility, meaning you don't interfere. You can, but you don't. Only in the most serious and dire of circumstances. In another story, we're learning Iran still has an active fatwa calling for the assassination of President Trump. The administration is aware of this, they say, and have been keeping it under wraps, apparently trying to keep the attention off of it. But the strategy backfiring. Fox News reporting this morning that they have been crowdsourcing, Iran has been crowdsourcing this fatwa, and it's now raised $40 million US. Watch.
All of this coming as a fatwa, or religious decree from Iranian officials, is calling for the assassination of President Trump, and they claim to have created an online fund worth an estimated $40 million. Max Lesser is senior analyst for emerging threats at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He's been looking into all of this and does join us now live to discuss it a little bit further. First off, Max, thank you so much for being here with us. Can you kind of explain the situation here overall as a whole, what we're being told and maybe what we don't know just yet?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Josh. So there have been a lot of threats issued recently by members of the Iranian government, Shiite clerics against Trump or just against Americans more broadly. And what I would say is that Iran has been trying to assassinate President Trump for years. And now it's all out in the open. And what I've been looking at with my team at FDD is a particular website that is seeking or allegedly claiming to crowdfund a bounty for Donald Trump's assassination, saying, look, if you carry out this deed, we will compensate you with this money. They claim to have raised millions and millions of dollars. The most recent figure was over $40 million. We have no idea if this is a legitimate number or not. But it's a clear effort to try to mobilize and motivate any sympathetic audience to carry out an act of violence against President Trump.
So let me get this straight. President Trump saving both the supreme leader of Iran's life and saving the Iranian regime at the same time. He could have let Israel just keep going, but he didn't. Hoping it would change their behavior. In return, Iran shows their gratitude by issuing a fatwa and calling for his death. I don't know about you, but it seems like there's a lesson here.